Hello my friends, welcome to another video at the Lulu Blue Studio. My name is Luisa and today we are going to paint something fun. This is a floral composition, a loose style floral composition where I used almost all of the colors in my color palette to create all of these loose style flowers. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of understanding how to create something that is so colorful and especially so filled of flowers and leaves. So the first thing that I do is to use my round brush in size 12 to start to create the first yellow flowers in the center. These flowers are no flowers in particular, and I'm creating a mixture mainly of lemon yellow and yellow ochre from Schmincke. And I just take care to create these petals that are leading to the center of these flowers that I'm going to create in a second moment. This floral composition is not about being perfect in the shape of the flowers, and not all of the flowers need to be exactly recognizable with the flowers in nature. I created this loose style floral composition having a fun aspect in mind, where practicing with colors and with different brushes and brush strokes, you can experiment and understand which loose flowers you like to paint more and which floral composition you can create next. So after I've created these yellow flowers, I take the same brush and I use a little bit of transparent orange to create a few more flowers in a similar shape. Keep in mind that all the petals of these flowers need to lead to the same center in order for these flowers to be quite similar to flowers in nature. I mix together with the transparent orange a little bit of yellow ochre, and I keep practicing these brush strokes, creating these petals. So in this first step, I'm just laying onto paper a bunch of flowers in this shape. Let's say that these flowers are similar to daisies. And I keep in mind to change the color value and the color use of these petals. The color value is the amount of pigment that I have on the brush, so I can have a higher amount of pigment or a lower amount of pigment when I remove part of the pigment in the jar of water. And I keep creating this first layer of petals in the center part of this composition. I then decided to add a sort of tulip in the lower right corner of this page. And I use mainly colors like lemon yellow, yellow ochre, and I add a little bit of scarlet red through the wet in wet technique. So while I'm creating this composition, I keep in mind where I want my upper part of the composition to be and my lower part of the composition to be. So since I'm creating this orange big flower, sort of tulip, in the bottom right corner of this page, this is going to be where most likely the eye of the observer will look at as the final part of this composition. Using the same round brush, and in particular the tip of this brush, I mix a little bit of quinacridone purple and cobalt violet to create this loose style flower with long and fine petals. This flower is shaped and is looking towards the upper right corner of the page, and I keep using the tip and the belly of this round brush to create different brush strokes. Since I want my floral composition to be quite symmetric, I create a similar flower but a little bit higher in the opposite side of the page, so in the left part of the page. I use similar colors, but I keep in mind to change the color value in order to create movement into this composition. As I am painting, I keep looking at what I've created and I keep thinking where I would like my flowers to be positioned. In this moment, I'm thinking that I'd like to add something in the upper part of the page, a flower like a rose that is higher than anything I've created up until now, because I wanted to create more flowers in the upper part of the page. In particular, I'm using a mixture of scarlet red and quinacridone purple from Schmincke to create this bud of rose. I like usually my roses to have the center part a little bit more concentrated in color, and then I usually like to create the outer petals with a color that is a little bit lighter, so with a different color value compared to the center. In order to achieve this, I remove part of the pigment into the cup of water, and using the belly of the brush, I create these brush strokes that are a little bit lighter. When I've created a little bit of flowers, like in this instance, I start to add a few leaves. I keep using mainly sub-green, but I use also a mixture of azometine green yellow from the brand Van Gogh, and I take care to start creating leaves in different sizes and in different shapes. Since I planned this composition to be quite heavy in flowers since the beginning, I am now already adding a few leaves in different shapes and sizes to start to find the space for these leaves to be added and to give these contrasting colors of green compared to the yellow, orange and purple that I've used to create the petals of these flowers. So my recommendation for you is to create leaves either when you have created all of the flowers in your composition, or after you have created a few of the flowers, of the main flowers in your composition, to take the space onto the page to create these beautiful long or short leaves. Remember to change the color value and the color hue, and remember also to use the wet on wet technique on your leaves, but also on your flowers, to give more movement to all of these elements. On my color palette, I create a mixture of quinacridone magenta with a little bit of yellow ochre and a touch of scarlet red. And with the belly of this brush, this is a round brush, I keep creating these short and round shaped strokes that lead the eyes of the observer to the upper right corner on this page. Through the wet on wet technique, I keep adding a few brush strokes of quinacridone magenta into the first layer of wet paint, and I allow the quinacridone magenta to blend beautifully with this first layer of orange yellow color that I've created. As I've done for the purple flowers, I create a symmetric composition also on the left side by adding a few flowers like I've just done on the right side using a mixture of quinacridone magenta, and I create a shorter bunch of flowers in the left part of the page. So left and right there are similar flowers that are like calling each other, and at this point I've decided to use a similar approach to create a few flowers also leading to the bottom part of the page in the left corner. I'm using always this same technique, and I take advantage of this beautiful watercolor technique that is wet in wet to allow colors like quinacridone magenta to blend with the first layer that is still wet of this mixture of yellow ochre and quinacridone magenta. I usually add a few strokes of more concentrated magenta just using the very tip of the brush, and this allows this technique, the wet in wet technique, to blend beautifully when the whole composition is going to be completely dry. I loved the outcome of these flowers so much that I've decided to create another branch of flowers here in the lower corner of the page. And I've decided that the observer can start looking at this composition starting from the upper right corner of this page. Look at all the flowers and the leaves in the center part of this composition, and then the eyes of the observer can be led towards the lower left corner of this page where these pink flowers, Lulu style flowers, are located. Using the belly and the tip of this brush, I'm creating some more concentrated Lulu style flowers in the right part and in the left part of the page. I'm using a mixture of this beautiful cobalt violet and quinacridone purple from Schimncke Horadam, and I really like how this purple is especially blending with the magenta, quinacridone magenta and yellow ochre that I've created the flowers in the left lower corner that are still wet. Up until this point, I've used almost all of the colors in my color palette to create all of these bright flowers, Lulu style flowers, all over the page. Now I'm mixing a little bit of blue, this is cobalt blue, with a little bit of green, cobalt green, to create additional leaves within these flowers. I keep in mind to have a few leaves that are in small size, and then I will create other leaves in bigger size. Remember that a composition is dynamic and nice to look at when elements throughout the page are in different sizes. So keep in mind to create a few flowers that are smaller, to create a few leaves that are some in big sizes and some other leaves in small sizes, and mix all of these elements to create something that is dynamic. Take some time to understand where you want to add the leaves and other elements on your page, and keep in mind where the eyes of the observer should look at your composition, starting from the beginning down to the end of the page. I'm using in this moment a mixture of cobalt green dark, and I'm adding a few brush strokes into the wet, light mixture of sub-green of a few leaves, and I allow this dark green to blend with the underneath layer of sub-green. I also love to use this azometine green yellow from Van Gogh, which is a bright green that I love to mix also with the yellow, with the lemon yellow, to create some bright accent leaves in my compositions. Now that the first layer of paint has been laid onto paper, I start to use the round brush to mix a little bit of Mars Black and Burnt Umber to create a dark sort of brown to create the center of the yellow flowers. I use in particular the tip of my round brush to create very fine strokes. When all of the yellow flowers are completed, I use a similar mixture with a little bit of scarlet red to create the center of the orange flowers. I basically want these bright yellow and orange flowers to pop from the page with a dark center. And now that the center has been created, I use a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of subgreen to start creating some small leaves and small stems into the flowers that are in the lower part of the page. On the purple flowers, I use a mixture mainly of burnt umber to create the stems in the center. I use a similar mixture of brown also to create the stems with the light flowers I've created in the upper right corner of the page. And I like these contrasting colors like brown with light pink that lay together onto the page. I keep adding a few brush strokes to fill the white spaces with small leaves. And I use mainly a mixture of azometin green yellow. I remember to change the color hue and the color value by mixing different colors, mainly blue colors to create darker greens, but also removing part of the pigment in the cup of water to achieve different color values. I keep refining the shape of the whole composition, and basically I want this whole composition to be very filled of flowers and leaves in the very central part of the page and with not so many leaves and flowers in the corners. When creating a loose style composition with a lot of flowers and leaves, like in this case, I suggest to use different brushes in different sizes to create different brush strokes that imitate leaves. Also keep in mind to change the color values and the color hues, as we have already said. Now that the whole first layer of the flowers is completely dry, I use this round shape in size 6 to start to add definitions, adding a few brush strokes through the wet on dry technique. In this case, I'm adding a few brush strokes of scarlet red on the tulip that I've created in the lower right corner of the page. If you're interested in understanding which colors I'm using in my floral compositions, please let me know in the comments below. I can also make a whole tutorial about my color palette and which colors I love using. All the colors I'm using and all of the supplies in these videos are mentioned in the description below. At this point, I take a little bit of yellow ochre, and with this fine brush in size 6, I just add a few brush strokes on the petals of the yellow flowers that are completely dry, and I will add a few sort of shadows to these petals. I keep in mind to change my color hues when I add these brush strokes, and so sometimes I add a little bit of lemon yellow, and for the orange flowers I keep using mainly transparent orange and scarlet red. You can decide to add additional brush strokes in the same way I am doing to give a few additional details, for example, to the petals. But you can also decide to stop at this moment and just enjoy the composition as you have created it. As I'm looking at the whole composition, I realize that I want to add a few brush strokes also onto the rose that is in the upper part of the page, and therefore using this round brush I add a few strokes in scarlet red and quinacridone purple. I love the outcome of this floral piece. In particular, I love that it's very colorful. I love that I've used a lot of colors, almost all of the colors on my color palette, and also I like very much how bright these colors from Schmincke are. So as I said, if you're interested in understanding which colors I'm using, let me know in the comments below and I can create another tutorial where I explain in the details which colors I'm using for my floral compositions. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you had fun. If so, please subscribe to this channel. See you in the next tutorial.